Greeting viewers, Columbia Global Centers Nairobi warmly welcomes you, our audience, to the continuation of our Emotional Intelligence series. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, direct, and positively express emotions. In this series, we have covered several subtopics. One was self-awareness, which is the ability to understand yourself and to be in tune with your feelings, thoughts, and actions. Second was self-regulation, which is the extent to which people influence, modify, or control their behavior. Third was stress management, which is the act of applying various techniques to control stress with the intention of improving daily living. If you have been following the series, you will note that this has been a process of learning how to understand oneself and how to apply coping or remedial techniques. Today we are talking about self-care as an important aspect of achieving wholesome living. As always, your host is Columbia Global Centers Nairobi in partnership with Albert Migowa. Albert is a trained counseling psychologist and an emotional intelligence coach. He will be moderating the session. Columbia Global Centers Nairobi is part of 9 regional hubs positioned around the world by Columbia University. The centers serve as platforms for dialogue and the exchange of knowledge in research, education, as well as public programming. Our speaker today is Grace Mogaka. Grace has over 20 years work experience, having started out in people operations with a specialization in identifying talent, ensuring compliance on government regulation, fostering personal growth of individuals, and promotion of positive company culture in humanitarian organizations. She is leveraged her long employment experience with counseling at the workplace. Grace established a counseling practice in 2017 until June 2020. At the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, she moved online and supported clients virtually up until January 2022. She became an accredited family mediator consultant at FIDA Kenya in 2018, where she plays this role to date. She is currently studying virtually analytical psychology at the Carl Jung Institute in Switzerland. As we begin, kindly note, today's program is being recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel in the coming week. In order to make our session interactive, please keep posting your questions or comments under the Q&A area. And remember to follow us on social media so that you can stay updated with all our upcoming programs. Our social media handles will be posted in the chat section by Sandra. Albert, you're most welcome to take it from here.
Hello, everyone, from whichever part of the world you're tuning in from. I'm so delighted to have you all tuning in. As you're aware, self-care is a very, very key thing, especially right now, going by what we are all undergoing, either at a personal level, at a community level, and at a societal level. So this conversation is very timely. And it's my hope that all of us will be able to pick a thing or two and see what we can actually incorporate and run with. Without much ado, I'd like to throw it to open the floor to Grace. As you've heard, Grace has had quite a bit of experience in the counseling space and fraternity. And it is my hope and delight that by the end of this conversation, not only will we be able to learn from Grace, but also see how we can also connect from her. Grace, over to you.
Thank you so much, Albert. I hope I'm clear. If I'm not, please just let me know. So thank you for that elaborate introduction, Pauline, and also for your kind words, Albert. It's my pleasure to be here this evening with you, whichever part of the world you are from. And I'm looking forward to this session. And I just want to quickly say that my presentation will not be a 20-page PowerPoint presentation, because I'm hoping to have a Q&A session at the end. And I want it to be experiential and, ask me questions, and I'll try as much as possible to respond to you where your concerns are from. So let me just jump right to it, that today we'll be discussing about what self-care is. I'm going to help you understand, in a few words, the definition of self-care, why self-care is important, the challenges and the myths around self-care. What, when you hear someone saying, I'm into my self-care mode, what does that mean? Do you think they're selfish, or do you think that really it's valid what they've said? And we're also going to look at what does self-care look like for you? And then after that, I'll give some of my just personal suggestions and recommendations, and then we can get into the Q&A session. So without much further ado, I just want to put up my presentation for all of you. So just 1 second. Okay, so there it is. Albert, is everything okay? Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. So we'll start, but what is self-care? So self-care is the deliberate and intentional act of taking responsibility for one's own needs, the way I feel. And self-care is about the I, the you, and the way that is you, engage with the world around yourself. We can also add that it is the practice of activities one initiates and partakes on their own to maintain their life, health, and well-being. And with this diagram, I put it in there for you to be able to just understand that self-care can be asking for help, spending time alone, putting yourself first, asking for what you need, setting boundaries. And I'm hoping to hear some questions from you about boundaries, because a lot of us struggle with setting boundaries and what that means and what that looks like. Staying at home when you don't want to go around and be with other people. Learning how to say no. From our socialization, the families we were brought up into, saying no was perceived and seen as rude. So is it possible to say no and be respected and know that you're actually setting a boundary, and you can actually tell somebody like, I can't do that, whatever you're asking of me right now, let me think about it, or let me get back to you when I can attend to you. And also forgiving yourself. We come from, complex families. We come from, different backgrounds. We've experienced hurt at workplace, at home, with our partners, people who we love, who we care. We've also hurt people in the process of our life's journey. So how do we learn, once we reach that stage of being self-aware, how do we learn to forgive ourselves? How do we take a step back? You've been maybe in corporate, or you've been in school, you've done your studies and things are still not working out. What do you need to do? Some are saying, oh, change your course. Some are saying, no, look for a job. Maybe you want to do something else. How do you take a step back, look at your landscape, and how do you go within yourself and say, like, I'm taking a step back. I'm not going to pursue what had been prescribed for me. And I'm just going to take a minute and evaluate what I need to do, and then move forward with the choices that I'm about to make. And then asking for help. Asking for help is also, as complex as learning how to say no. We've always been told that you've got to be self-reliant, independent, especially with the women, us women, we are independent women. We focus on our career, make our own money. We have to know as much as possible. So how do we ask for help? So that in a nutshell is what self-care is. And those are some of the, the highlights that I've put in for you. Okay, so what are some of the common myths about self-care? Self-care can be perceived as selfish when you say no, or I can't right now. or you're setting boundaries, or you just want to stay at home. People can perceive you're being selfish, you're being mean. Sometimes it can be perceived as being expensive. If you want to go to a spa and just have a massage or go to sauna, it costs money. And if you have money and you want to spend it on yourself, you may, or someone else can think that, oh, that you're spending too much money on yourself. Or sometimes even self-care in itself, like if you feel like you want to take a holiday and take a break, going for a trip outside Nairobi, that costs money. You've got to think about the logistics around there. And so you're like, okay, I guess I can't be able to do self-care because I want to go to Mombasa. But what are some of the activities I can undertake that are inexpensive? The other common myth is that it should be earned. And I've heard this many times in my previous counseling practice, is that I deserve the best. I deserve it. I've earned it. Like, I worked so hard and now I'm going to have a drink. I've earned this self-care to treat myself, And then sometimes people also feel that it's time consuming. Just staying at home, laying back, taking a step back is time consuming. We are in a society where we have to keep doing the grind. We have to just make sure that we are able to pay our bills, meet some of our family obligations, if you have a family, if you have extended family. So you feel like you can't even invest on yourself because it's time consuming, it's expensive, it's selfish, and it should be earned. So why is self-care important? Self-care is important because it encourages you to maintain a healthy relationship with yourself so that you can be able to attend or care for others in a meaningful and present way. Self-care helps you stay focused, rejuvenated, stress-free, and sane. But more importantly, it keeps off burnout. You cannot give to others what you don't have for yourself, what you don't have yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And that's, I believe it's a West African a proverb. So what are some of the challenges of self-care? So self-care awareness came to the forefront during the COVID-19 lockdowns. As many people were at home with families on full-time basis, there was no going to work or being in active enterprise. Some people remained isolated for long periods. Some people, I know what ended up happening is that I took up poor eating habits. I know of a lot of people who stayed at home and were consuming alcohol at home in the presence of their children, which was really unfortunate. A lot of us spent time on screens, on Netflix, or on Instagram, reading reports, looking at what was going on, just feeding into that whole negative feedback loop, and many other things. But however, those who could afford were able to buy board games, would go out of town, would invest in bicycles and cycle, would go out on nature walks, trails, hikes. Some of us had to acquire new skills. We learned new skills. Some of us who never used to cook, we had to now start learning how to cook because we were at home. And some of us had to reinvent ourselves after the job losses, because a lot of, I know quite a number of people who lost jobs because of the lockdowns. However, self-care can be challenging, especially for those who grew up in dysfunctional families. And I'm saying who grew up in dysfunctional families, and I'm not saying that there are no dysfunctional families existing, but it's just lack of awareness about what a dysfunctional family looks like, or maybe their children, they're dependent on their parents or their caregivers, and there's nothing they can do. They can't express their needs. They can't ask for support that they need. But as a lot of us adults who are here, maybe some of us grew up in dysfunctional families or developed codependent traits, and we struggled with self-care because we had to focus on other people's needs, feelings, problems, take care of others, and often at our own expense, mental, physical, emotional well-being. So it actually takes a deep introspection and courage to prioritize oneself. I'm not saying that self-care is easy and you after this session, you're going to walk out of here and you're saying, now, you bang the table and you're saying, now it's all about me. It will take, a bit of introspection and see what you really need and see where you are vis-a-vis family, workplace, friends, and other significant relationships. Why should we be more aware of self-care? Because of the health effects, the loss of concentration as a result of burnout, lack of motivation. There are moments where we don't feel like getting out of bed, but bills have to be paid. So you just go for the sake of just doing the grind and making sure that you're able to pay the bill. Self-medication. Self-medication is becoming a very, very serious issue because of the issues of finances, and many people who do not have the privilege of being in regular employment, what ends up happening is that if they're unwell, they'll walk to a pharmacist and discuss what their ailment is and buy whatever medication they're buying off the counter. And that's a big risk. Because what ends up happening is that people are now abusing, medication that they buy or over the counter. There's chances of decreased libido, relationship problems, and burnout, as I'd mentioned earlier. So we all just need to be aware why self-care is important, because these are some of the effects if we do not take care of ourselves. The consequences of self-care are physical, mental, emotional, our overall wellness, and harm to self and others. Physically, when you stop caring about your physical appearance, your personal hygiene starts to suffer, you have poor nutrition, you don't eat well, you abuse alcohol and other substances, and then there are all these stress-related illnesses that come about, like skin rash, acid reflux, and even hypertension. In case of mental, you have racing thoughts, you're unable to sleep, you're filled with anxiety, you become fearful, mentally exhausted, there's forgetfulness, absent-mindedness, low morale, and also compassion fatigue, because you've been giving to people and no one is giving back to you, or you feel like no one is attending to your needs. And then also guilt, sense of guilt, when, like, I've been giving, I'm so exhausted, I'm tired, I'm anxious, and feelings of guilt that are coming out as a result of this. And then the emotional consequences are the mood swings, anger, impatience with people, conflict, tension, depressive mood, mistrust, assigning blame, physical and emotional abuse. We know how, like when we were growing up in dysfunctional homes, mom was unhappy with dad, dad was abusing alcohol, mom lashes out to the children, dad, because he can't, hit mom, he'll kick the dog. I mean, there are just some of these things that happen at homestead. At workplace, you're impatient with teams, you set unrealistic expectations with team members, you use foul language, you're not attentive, you give poor instructions to your team members are afraid to come and approach you and speak to you, and yet it's because you are not taking care of yourself. And then the overall wellness, you have a negative outlook towards life, you're always pessimistic, you don't see anything good. You start experiencing inability to solve problems as they arise. You find that you're unable to pay your bills on time. You're unable to take care of your family. You're unable to, just be present at work and solve problems at work as per your job description. You're not able to deliver on your target. You have poor coping mechanism, there's increased as absenteeism at work or business, and then just overall diminished productivity of work, or even in enterprise if you're running a business. And then one of the things that's also coming out that we saw an increase during the COVID period was harm to self and others. The intimate violence, intimate partner violence was really high. I'm sure some of you are able to read about that, and for those who watch TV, you are able to see the consequences of violence towards children, violence towards friends, you know, like in the military, the police, all of a sudden you people are colleagues or your friends, you went to the bar for a drink and as something small, it triggers you, you take your gun and shoot your fellow colleague. Holding on to pain and past hurts and constantly ruminating on past injustices and unfairness that have arisen in your life. So these are some of the consequences of self-care, and we will be able to talk about more as we progress. And I'm hoping to get your questions and answer based on my presentation. So types of self-care. As we have seen the consequences of not having proper self-care, we know that we need to take care of our spiritual lives. For those who are Christians, for those who are in other religions, and even for those who are non-practicing, but there's a practice you've adopted or included in your life, and it's a spiritual practice, that's also important. Physical self-care, working out, running, going to a gym or working at home. There are countless of videos on Keep Fit. Social self-care. How are you and your friends? How are you getting on with your family members? Do you have an active social life? How does your social life look like? What are the quality of your friends? And what activities do you engage in when you get together? And then the emotional self-care, what it is you're doing for yourself and what you need to do if you've been adapting you know, like negative emotional self-care, the negative talks, the anger, the bitterness. How do you work with that? And we look at just some of the things that one can adopt and start, you know, working on. And then also personal self-care, you know, the grooming, what are you eating? How are you taking care of yourself? Are you journaling? What are some of the practices you're doing to just improve on your own personal self-care? So what does self-care look like for you? Physically, you engage in physical practices such as walking, yoga, Pilates, stretching, grounding. This is a new expression that came to me sometime last year, but it actually means spending time in nature. And I really think this is key because a lot of us are living in spaces where there's no greenery, there are no trees, it's all concrete. So I encourage people to, as much as possible, try and maybe even if it's going up country or going to some of these nature parks, go out there, spend time in nature, sit on the grass, remove your shoes, you know, just feel, you know, the ground, you know, try and walk barefoot. Of course, you've got to make sure that it's safe and, you know, you don't hurt yourself, but that's a really important exercise to adopt. Taking cold showers. I know many of us went to boarding schools where there was cold shower and we've sworn never to do that, but cold showers really help you. And one of the benefits of cold showers is they spark, you know, the neurons. So you come out of it and you actually feel mentally alert, and it helps also in the deep breathing because that shock of cold water on your skin just helps you gasp in for breath and you're able to have breath intakes, and maybe many others as time and resources permit. The benefits are the feel-good hormone levels, dopamine, serotonin, endorphins are increased, and they lead one to experience positive emotions, thus leading to positive outlook in life. And will also improve on your insomnia because poor self-care does lead to poor sleeping habits. Mental, I always encourage people to read books, learn, acquire a new skill, engage in a do-it-yourself practice or project, whichever it may be. And I encourage people to start to discipline yourself in not viewing your computer or phone screens after 11 a.m. or before 5 a.m. because the bright lights of our screens really do affect our sleeping. It's known as the circadian rhythm. And so if you're looking at your screen right into the middle of the night, it takes a long time to fall asleep. And then when you wake up, the first thing we do, our habit is to reach out for our phones. But maybe you should just allow yourself a minute, maybe do a brief meditative exercise, go out and have a shower, and then allow yourself to say, like, I'll be looking at my phone from 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning. Engage in meditative practices such as prayer, some yoga practices. I actually just put in some yoga practices, but one of the things that I've started in my personal life is the yoga nidra, whereby it helps. I do that just before going to bed, and it helps me sleep properly. To help improve on insomnia. Read physical books, magazines, as opposed to reading them on the screen. Listen to long form podcasts and sleep meditation. And any other, like if you're in a romantic partner or you're in a marriage, I encourage you to look at bonding, and these are the moments where you like invest in your intimate practice with your special other. That way it improves also your mental outlook, and it also works towards improving your relationship with your special person. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so did I? Okay. Yeah, and then, all right. So emotionally maintaining a positive perspective, count your blessings. I know this is something for us Christians, we hear a lot in church. There are songs to go around, but it helps to count your blessings. Look at what's working, and this moment you're here, you're present for this webinar. There are many who are struggling right now, but you are present, you have your health. Learn how to express gratitude, practice good deeds, offer a helping hand to anyone who's unwell, struggling with health, or a single mother who is in your neighborhood, and maybe you can offer to take care of a child for them while they maybe run to the shop. Also offer yourself in your church, in your community, and even into our extended families. And what I wanted to say is that in our current challenging economic times, making adjustments and looking at alternative options is something we all need to do. Do we have to buy cheaper options, but good quality? Can we go to the markets as opposed to buying our fruits and vegetables in the supermarket because of our economic situation, things have really changed? Is there a way to help, like, do a community sort of like shopping? Like if you come from up country and there are people who can supply vegetables from up country and boost the subsistent farmers up country with their production, and you buy their fruits and vegetables and look at those costs vis-a-vis what you're buying in your local supermarket or in your local market. Consider engaging the services of a professional therapist if you feel you are not coping very well, because I am cognizant of the fact that people will do yoga, will meditate, are not taking alcohol, but still the feelings of guilt, anxiety, lack of sleep, depression, it's really confounding them, and they may, need actually an external person to support them. And then the general overall wellness is invest in healthy diet. Make a point of eating protein and high fiber or complex carbs for breakfast instead of the starch that we were introduced to when we were children. We gave our children, and now we are still eating the breads and the donuts and the chapatis and the sugary drinks. Take a bit of time to do research and look at the affordable options for breakfast. Be responsible for your own needs, the way you feel, and how you engage with yourself vis-a-vis others. Learn how to set healthy boundaries, learning to say no without over-explaining or feeling guilty. Instead, use words that I can't right now, maybe later. Learn how to let go of bitterness and practice forgiveness, because this constant rumination of past injustices just continue to reinforce your negative outlook towards life, and also towards like people just around you, even at your place of work, and it could be friends. Yeah. And then be intentional about making time to socialize with family and friends, play board games, go for excursion outside your town, be curious about the country you're living in. Kenya, where I am from, is really beautiful. And then with the improved roads, it's possible to travel really, like 3 counties outside Nairobi. And then take advantage of our good weather and try and spend as much time outdoors as possible. Begin a practice of journaling every day, even if it is writing down a few lines. Explore or learn a new hobby. Food for thought on self-care is that, I just want to thank the Columbia Global Center's team for availing me this opportunity. And for me is to tell you listeners and guests is please sign up for Columbia Global Center's newsletter for further information and remain updated on the health programs and events that they may have. And I've just put in as a complimentary, one of the podcasts that I listen to long form is one of my favorite neuroscientists. His name is Dr. Andrew Huberman podcast. I've been listening to him for the last 2 years, and he is amazing. He has a lab and he's a professor at Stanford University. I don't think I was ever going to go to Stanford, but I've had the privilege of listening to him online, and I can't even imagine how many hours it is. And he shares a lot on what's happening in the scientific front, and one of his best podcasts to me was the best gratitude practices. And this challenged me to think not just about receiving, but also being a giver. And with that, I want to hand over to Albert, and then I look forward to your Q&As. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so very much, Grace. I tell you, you've taken us to school indeed. And for me, I feel this self-care is so key, especially at this point in time. Keep in mind with all the issues which we are facing as a world, whether it's COVID, whether it is monkeypox, whether it is socioeconomic issues, whether it is psychosocial issues like GBV, intimate partner violence, issues of unemployment or underemployment or job loss, and the list goes on and on. It is very, very key. And for me, the point that sticks out for me is the fact that it is an intentional act. So it is something you must do with a lot of deliberation. You will decide that now from 4 p.m. I do my exercise. From 5 p.m. I do my yoga. So it's an intentional act. But secondly, it is something that is very key for our well-being. Because one thing like you mentioned, Grace, is that we tend to work like robots, I guess. You know, we want to meet so many demands, and you forget yourself, and you forget the machine called I, the person. Remember, when you do not exist, you cannot do all the other amazing things. So it is therefore so important to really take care of our well-being with a lot of deliberation. I love the entire aspect of emotional, psychological, physical, spiritual, because what that does to me, it also reminds me of what you call the wheel of life. And remember, for you to be a well-balanced individual, there's need for you to be very balanced in all those areas of life. Okay, so with that, I'd like to open the floor to questions and comments. Kindly let's participants. Now it's your turn. Over to you all. Maybe as they ponder, I'd like to begin by asking a question, Grace. Is there a link between self-care and self-confidence?
Yes. Yes, thank you, Albert, for that question. There is a link. Clearly, if you're functional, if you're taking care of your mental wellness, you know, your health, your emotional being, you're practicing gratitude, you're maintaining a positive outlook on life, of course, your confidence levels go up, because you're able to tackle situation. You wake up in the morning that today is the day I'm grabbing the opportunities and everything that's coming my way. Today is going to be a good day. I'm going to be intentional and deliberate. And the more you're intentional and deliberate, and you are able to accomplish your hourly goals, your daily goals, you know that you're able to solve problems as they come. It boosts your confidence, and you're able to take up even additional challenges, additional tasks, additional responsibility. And you can also work on complex tasks and even problems. And what happens is that when you're challenged to do more and you succeed, your confidence grows up. Because if you're at workplace, of course, your bosses will see, you get a positive review. That means there's opportunity for growth. If you're able to engage with your customers, if you're in a private enterprise, and you're able to attend to them, be on time, deliver on time, as agreed, be a person of integrity and you know, who keeps your word. If you're able to deliver, you get more business. If you're able to not just show up, but show up, be present, and be committed to delivering what you say you'll do, your confidence goes up. And I've actually seen it with the clients that I've worked on, from coming to my clinic when they were really down and broken, to leaving that space and meeting them a year later, and they're thriving. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. So participants, kindly, questions? Let me check the chat box. Okay, there's a question here. Someone is asking, how can one go about dealing, just let me try to rephrase the question. How can one go about dealing? Okay, how can one go about dealing, regaining the emotional balance without entirely having to face the fear of confronting people? How can one go about dealing, regaining the emotional balance without entirely having to face the fear of confronting people?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And, you know, in my previous life, I would have said, then first of all, it depends on the type of relationship this person is in. Is it an intimate relationship? Is it a significant other? Or is it at workplace? Or where is that? So also depending on where you are, because there's some people you can just walk away. If it's friends or just in a, you know, I don't know, with whatever setting, and they're putting out illogical arguments, then you can say, okay, maybe this person doesn't know and I can walk out of it. But if it is at a workplace and it's a business meeting and like it's a marketing meeting or a strategy meeting and you do have a point, I personally, where I'm seated right now, is I'd ask you to actually say, yes, point taken on what you've just said, but my reasoning and my points are this and this and this, and then you can substantiate them with facts. Because I just want to tell you that one of the things we need to overcome is fear. We have to start cultivating courage. And it's not easy. I remember in my younger age, I was a fearful young girl, young child. But through the years, and I know like my confidence came in by becoming a mother, when I got married and becoming a mother, a parent, and I was able to assert myself, and I was able to cultivate assertive skills. And I was able to also know that the importance of having facts. Oh, you're saying this, okay. The reason why I'm putting this argument forward is that it's being supported by this and this and this fact. So whoever's put out this question, if it's in an intimate relationship, let them know that you hear them, and then say that also, if it's in the intimate relationship, like I'm also putting my point across. Like, this is my point, this is it. You don't give up, because what you end up happening is that you clamp down, you shut up, keep quiet, and you go inwards. And what ends up happening is that you start ruminating and start feeling like you're not being heard. And maybe it's time to say, like, I'm hearing you, but I'd also like you to hear me. And this is what I'm trying to explain to you. Use I statements, that they help. If it's at a workplace, you'll have to just work on building your assertive skills and becoming courageous and substantiating your facts, your statements with facts. Because what ends up happening is that if you have facts, and that is actually, you can present that, then people can't argue with facts. It's not about feelings, it's about facts. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Someone asks, what tips would you recommend for someone who wants to begin journaling? What tips would you recommend for someone who would want to begin journaling?
Thank you. Get a notebook first and foremost, and then start, and you decide, do you want to do journaling first thing when you wake up, or do you want to do it just right before you go to bed? So that's the decision you'll have to make. So first get a notebook and then decide what you want to, what time of the day you want to do it. Early, first thing in the morning when you open your eyes, or just before you go to bed. And then what do you want to write? If it's first thing in the morning, it would help to start, what did you dream about? How are you feeling this morning? And please note that a journal should be separate from a work sort of like to-do list. Your journal is not a to-do list book. Your journal is very private. It enables you to write down and articulate your thoughts, your feelings, your ideas, also your dreams and aspirations. Yeah. So if you're going to do it first thing in the morning, somewhere to start is, what did you dream of? Because some of us, when we wake up in the morning, we forget what we dreamt of. So it would help to write down what you dreamt of, and then just what are coming through to you, what you're thinking of. And you do not have to even spend a page or not, but that's what I'd recommend when you want to start the journaling journey. Yeah. I hope I'm clear.
Great. There's a question here. What is emotional intelligence?
Emotional intelligence is something that is nurtured, and it's nurtured through experience, through the homes that we grew up in, where we went to school, the people who are around us, who are a sphere of influence. And it's such a key thing. EI is something that has been talked about for the last, I think, 20 years, that it's something that's actually recognized that you need EI to be able to function in an organization, even at your home front. And what ends up happening is that as I said, it is nurtured. It's actually not just, you're not born having EI. You learn how to pick cues of people, when to say things and when not to say things, and how to frame and phrase issues you want to put out. For example, and I'm just going to make an assumption that maybe you're at a workplace and you head the HR, and a colleague, a head of a department has asked you to come and let a person go. How will you handle it? You do have your policies, you have your laws and regulations, but then there's a tactful way that you'll have to deliver that news to this person. How are you going to frame how you're letting this person go? You'll ask them to come in. Ideally, this should be done first thing in the morning, before somebody settles in a routine, and let them know, make sure that you have the paperwork, everything ready, and then let them know that these are the concerns that have been brought to you. The organization can no longer keep you, and they've made the painful decision to release you. Many a times is that when you're letting go someone, it's going to be painful, there'll be tears, there'll be long stories, but you now will just have to be objective, let them know that you hear them, but this is the decision that has been collectively undertaken by the organization. So it's nurtured, you get it through your work experience, life experience. And to be honest, in my own experience, is that you become more emotionally intelligent with maturity. So I know I filibustered a bit there, but I hope I was able to assist.
And perhaps if I might add, it also involves being able to understand your feelings and those of other people, and responding appropriately so as to have meaningful and productive relationships in the long run.
Yeah, you're the emotional intelligence expert. That was your question, Albert.
It's okay. Now, guys, let's have the questions coming. Great. Can self-care lead you to a place of toxic comfortability? For example, you learn how to say no to even the slightest inconveniences that sometimes you find it hard to push yourself out of the comfort zone and grow. Can self-care lead you to a place of toxic comfortability? For example, you learn how to say no to even the slightest inconveniences that sometimes you find it hard to push yourself out of the comfort zone and grow.
Wow. So Violet, I can actually see your question. And for me, your first sentence, can self-care lead you to a place of toxic comfortability? That in itself is a paradox. You can't be toxic and comfortable. It leads to a lot of negative. So self-care cannot be toxic and cannot be it can be comfortable, but not toxic. And if you had a chance to listen to my presentation, is that setting boundaries, you're not being selfish. And if you imagine that you're going to be, selfish, and just to learn how to say no to even the slightest inconveniences. I would like you to explain to me what are the slightest inconvenience. Like if you can put on the chart, what do you mean by the slightest inconvenience? Like saying no for the sake of saying no? is that coming from a place of anger? When you're saying no to this person, you're saying no to, is it coming from a point of anger or resentment? So your questions has a lot of like paradoxes there. Self-care leads you to be a better person who will be able to attend to the needs of others. Yeah. First of all, you take care of yourself first, the I. That way, you're able to attend to others. And if you still feel like you're being negative, resentful, toxic, then maybe you need to go back and reflect on your journey of self-care. Like, have you done the work? Have you invested enough? Have you set your boundaries? Where is that coming from? Have you said no? Are you stepping back? Is this a relationship that actually needs to come to an end? Yeah, so these are some of the questions you need to ask. I would have liked to just had a few more insights from your question, Violet.
Okay, Violet, would you like to give more insights into the question as others have their questions and comments come in? Any more questions, comments? Okay, there's one interesting one here. How do you handle a rough boss? One who continually does things to annoy you?
Yeah, that's a really hard question, and especially in this day and season where we all have to hold on to the jobs because of our economic and financial situation. But Wycliffe, I'm curious to know, do you have staff policies at your workplace? And if you do, what is the grievance procedure? Like, how do you address concerns? Okay, so he is your boss. Is it possible for you to schedule a time and let him know that maybe you can send him an email or let him know, like, look, boss, I really would like to have a meeting, just you and I. There's some issues I'd like us to discuss and clarify and have it out of the way. If it's a female boss, you can do that and schedule time and then be very, very clear what it is you want to say, because you need to be very, not necessarily factual, but clear. Like, I don't like it when you shout at me in front of my colleagues. I feel humiliated and demeaned. I would like to be getting feedback promptly on assignments or rather tasks that I've completed. Because when you don't give me timely feedback and you expect me to action as soon as you've given feedback, that doesn't give me time to process my thought. If it's a male boss, then I'd ask you to evaluate how your relationship is. And one thing I do know is that men resolve workplace tension by having a beer. So it depends. Can your boss have a beer? Maybe you can invite him out for a beer, not late into the night and not a situation where you're going and you're splurging money to have a beer, but have 2 beers and have a talk so that he can see you through an informal setting and listen to you, how you present yourself, how you argue. You may not necessarily address some of the grievances you have towards him, but he'll be able to see you at a different light. Yeah. So I'm hoping that would, so I'd ask you to explore, look at your policies if you have them, and then find out the grievance procedure. Speak to your HR manager if it's not clear. If it's a female boss, schedule a meeting and then be very clear what your concerns are. If it's a male boss, either schedule a meeting and let him know, or if he's a person whom you can go out and meet informally for a glass of beer or 2, you could do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any more questions, comments? Okay, he's gone further than he has said. This is Wycliffe. Huh? He's in the public sector where the boss is the final say. And if you report them to higher authority, you endanger your job. Very
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah, very interesting, Wycliffe. Thank you for clarifying that. Wycliffe, my question to you is, what are your options? If you're in the public sector, are you able to move in a lateral manner to another public sector department? That's my question. And also, I would ask to you is, what are your options? What are you looking at exploring? Also, is it possible to, I don't know, request for a transfer? And to be honest, I have to admit, Wycliffe, forgive me, I'm not so sure about the public sector structure, but maybe those are some of the, like, can you move laterally, like move from the sector you're in into another department, public sector? What are some of what are the options? Is it possible for you to move into a different department?
Hi, Grace.
Hi, Wycliffe. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, the options you're saying, it's possible to transfer, but being in the public sector, you may possibly meet the same case, same boss in the other department you're going to, because your sort of policies are there. But now you find in public sector, people on the top office, they tend to personalize. They tend to personalize the office. So things are done the way they want.
Yeah.
Things are not done the way it's supposed to be done. Things are done the way the boss wants them to be done. So even if you transfer to another department or another part of the sector, there's always that fear. But anyway, it could be, you may meet a better one than the one you're having in your department. So I think that's an option. But
Good.
also it will take time. It takes time before you move from one department to another.
Yeah.
But thank you for that advice.
Yeah, thank you, Wycliffe, for actually explaining and clarifying, and I can actually like visualize it. My question is, what are your options apart from, maybe moving to another sector in the public sector, or you wait it out? But what are your options in going into the private sector? Do you have any options? Have you explored that? Have you explored, entrepreneurship? Have you explored going back to school so that you just have a breather?
Yes, I'm exploring. Actually, I'm doing a higher degree and hoping to move
Wonderful,
out.
wonderful.
So I'm working on that.
Wonderful. I wish you all the best. And good luck in the next place that you go. And now when you become a boss,
Yes.
you know how not to harass your colleagues.
Yeah.
But now, before I move, is now that I'm still there, how do you handle such a boss? Because the kind of boss we are, when you get a bit someone like confrontational, it becomes even harder.
Yeah.
It becomes, and then when it's like he wants to be pampered, but we also discuss as a staff. We say, how do you pamper an adult? Why should we? This is our rights. Why should we pamper somebody to give us our rights?
Yeah. Clearly, your boss has a number of issues and he's not being professional at workplace, and he's using his position of power to be an oppressor. So for me, Wycliffe, what I'd suggest is, whom do you know holds sway with your boss? And if you could have a confidential conversation with the person who holds sway with your boss and tell him to just slow down on people, on being hard. In organization, there are cliques. You'll always find there are cliques. There are some people who get along or who seem to get favors than others. So is the person who seems to hold sway or has a rapport with this really tough boss, maybe how can you speak to the person and say, you know, look, without necessarily disclosing what you're going through, but, you know, maybe you could speak to your friend and tell him to just calm down on people. Guys are feeling quite stressed in these difficult times. I'm just thinking on top of my head, Wycliffe, and I encourage you to just think through how you can manage this situation. And Albert, I don't know, maybe you want to chime in on that.
Yeah, I tell you, Wycliffe, I hear you, and I hear you because in another point in my life, I did engage with parastatal, which is partly government, partly private. And I know when you have such kind of bosses who are, it's more of ego. But I'll tell you this, one of my biggest learnings, especially in the recent times, is being very clear on my purpose. And sometimes certain things happen to tell you something. Perhaps the universe is telling you it is time to look at another direction. It is time to have multiple options. I'll show you what I was told with one of my mentors. And now, when I'm at that, I would recommend everybody to have a blend of both female mentors and male mentors. It does something. This is what my female mentor told me once. She told me, in all that you do, purpose to be in more than 10 sectors away from your work. The reason is simple. Not only are you learning, getting experiences, and getting networks, you are embedding yourself and you're building yourself a network. And what will happen over time when certain life changes happen, like right now, like what you're facing through, when you're able now to cultivate a certain product, a certain service, or both, then you'll be able to showcase it, present it to that network. And that will now be a platform for you, not just to earn, but a platform even to grow, learn, and even share your learning with other people. And that will also give you a lot of mental, some kind of mental stability, in that in the event one area is going not so well, there are 9, you know, like COVID came, many guys lost their jobs. To this very date, I know I know very soon there'll be massive layoffs at some point. That I'm very sure of, because of the program we are in by the World Bank. So the question is this, and I know it will hit the civil service. The question is this: what are you doing? What are you doing in the preparation for that reality? Because it is coming. So what I would add, if not already, get into other spaces, get into other sectors away from the one you're accustomed to. Get get out of your comfort zone. It will. I feel that could also be a tip that could also help you and everyone else. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Yes, Wycliffe.
Yeah, just still on the same subject of the boss. We have done some background check of the boss. We have found that he's actually having some issues at home. He actually they are not in good terms with the wife. He actually physically abused to the wife, and they're not staying together. So some of us, the colleagues, were thinking is maybe projecting the problems he's having at home to us. Even the social joints that he visits is very chaotic. It's very chaotic in the social joints. So actually we were discussing and thinking, can we invite a psychologist or a counselor to come and talk to him? But we don't know what approach to use. Is it an option that we can invite a counselor to come and talk to the boss?
Grace, go ahead.
Yeah, therapy, going to counseling has to come from within. And to be honest, I'm actually curious about the whole investigation part. So that I'm wondering whether there were boundaries crossed there and all that. But clearly, you can see maybe because of what you've just learned, there's a lot of the consequences of lack of self-care. The heart, the anger, it's manifesting at the workplace, and now team members are feeling oppressed. It's not a bad idea. Maybe that's something that you, Wycliffe, can take to the person who holds sway, who has his favor, and let him know that, yeah, there's a counseling psychologist available, and maybe he should look at the panel and see to talk. But therapy is voluntary, and somebody has to want it. So there's a lot going on, evidently. But then back to you, Wycliffe, because it's you who's here and who's asked a question. I would also, just to add on to what Albert has said, is as you prepare yourself and explore your options, can you do a SWOT analysis of yourself? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? And what are the threats? Yeah. And if you have the 4 squares out there in front of you, and you can look and see what, using this opportunity, depending on what's coming. Yeah. I'll help you. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, Grace and Albert.
Yes. Okay. I see we are slightly over time. Maybe at this point in time, if there are no other questions or comments, I would like to hand it over to Pauline or Sandra for the survey. Thank you.
I just launched it. So I think, yes, I just launched the poll, Albert.
Okay.
So it would be grateful for the participants to begin just answering.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So participants, a poll has popped up. Kindly fill it in.
May I end the poll now?
Okay.
Yes. I think I can be able to just give a vote of thanks at this particular time. Thank you very much, Grace.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
I get to see you. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Albert. Thank you very much for the presentation, Grace. And from the talks today, I have learned a lot how to be mindful and to enable and to build more of myself rather than focusing on what the repercussions of the problem or of anything around me is kind of making me feel, but I should allow myself to gain better muscle rather than focusing more on the problem. And so I think when I was hearing Albert speak, when I was hearing your speech, and it also emphasized it more when you spoke more about boundaries. Yes. So I'm understanding that as we continue through this series, that it doesn't matter what your surrounding, if it's burning, if it's raining, if it's shining, focus more on ensuring that you have a mental fortitude and also just being composed, not being phased out quickly by the things that are happening within you. So I'm very grateful. And I hope that in another session, Grace, you'll be able to come help us be better versions of ourselves. I have really enjoyed listening to you.
In fact, that's the next episode.
Oh, I'm coming the next.
Yes.
Yeah, it's on resilience, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that and how to build people's resilience because we all come from different backgrounds. But for me, is to just thank you, Pauline, Lillian, Albert, for just this amazing opportunity. Thank you all. Yeah, be greatly blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Have a nice evening. Have a nice day.
Bye.